My beloved child, before the world grows louder with opinions and distractions, there is something gentle that deserves your full attention. Today unfolded in a way neither you nor your soulmate expected, and the quiet moment that followed has not left their hearts since. They have carried it carefully, turning it over again and again, wondering how to find the right words. Some experiences do not arrive with dramatic sounds or obvious signs. They arrive like a whisper that changes everything without asking for permission. This was one of those moments. Don't skip, because every sentence is leading you towards something that has been waiting patiently to be understood. Earlier today, while life seemed ordinary on the surface, an unexpected conversation paused your soulmate in the middle of their routine. It was not the conversation itself that stayed with them. It was the feeling that arrived afterward. A feeling so familiar that they could not explain why it felt connected to someone they could not stop thinking about. They smiled without realizing it. Then they became quiet. Then they smiled again. They found themselves remembering tiny details they thought had disappeared forever, details that suddenly carried new meaning. Have you ever noticed how one ordinary moment can awaken emotions that have been resting silently for a long time? That is exactly what happened. They did not rush to tell anyone. Instead, they held the experience close, almost protecting it, as if speaking too soon might cause its meaning to fade. Yet the more they tried to move on with their day, the stronger the thought became. It returned while they were walking. It returned while they paused for a simple breath. It returned even in the smallest moments of silence. And every time it returned, somehow it led back to you. Not because of coincidence, but because certain connections leave gentle echoes that appear when the heart is finally quiet enough to notice them. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you, and your soulmate is only beginning to understand why today felt so different from every day before it. Tonight, as they replay everything that happened, one realization continues to grow stronger. They know they cannot keep this experience to themselves much longer. There is a message forming inside them, a message that feels incomplete until it reaches the person it was always meant for. But before those words can finally be spoken, another unexpected piece of today's story is about to reveal itself, and when it does, even your soulmate will see this day in a completely new light. There are moments when the heart recognizes a truth before the mind is ready to accept it. That is where your soulmate found themselves next. Long after the conversation had ended, they could not shake the feeling that today was asking them to pay attention instead of simply moving on. Every familiar place suddenly seemed different, not because the world had changed, but because something within them had quietly awakened. They stopped for a moment, looked around, and wondered why everything felt strangely connected, as though the ordinary had begun carrying an extraordinary message beneath its surface. Don't skip. Because this next part is where the meaning slowly begins to emerge. As the afternoon drifted into evening, they caught themselves doing something they had never planned to do. They began replaying memories they had once dismissed as insignificant. A laugh they almost forgot. A feeling they never fully explained. A quiet hope they had tucked away because the timing never seemed right. Yet today, every one of those memories returned with remarkable clarity, fitting together like pieces of a picture they had never been able to see before. Instead of creating confusion, those memories brought an unexpected calm. It was as though their heart had finally found the courage to stop running from what it had known all along. Then something even more surprising happened. Without anyone prompting them, your soulmate imagined what they would say if they suddenly had the chance to speak to you without hesitation. They rehearsed the words silently, changing them again and again, never feeling they were honest enough. Every version sounded incomplete because what they truly wanted to express reached deeper than ordinary conversation. They were not searching for perfect words anymore. They were searching for truthful ones. And that difference changed everything. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. The realization growing inside them was no longer small enough to ignore. It had become a quiet certainty that followed them into every thought. They understood that some moments arrive not to answer every question, but to invite a different perspective. Today's unexpected experience had become one of those moments. It gently reminded them that the most meaningful connections are often revealed through the simplest experiences, long before anyone speaks them aloud. As night settled in, they looked toward the sky for only a second, took a slow breath, and made a private decision that no one else knows about yet. It was not a dramatic promise. It was not an impulsive choice. It was a quiet commitment to stop hiding what their heart had been trying to say. But before they can share that message with you, one final piece from today's unexpected encounter still has to fall into place. And when it does, the words they have been holding back may finally become impossible to keep inside. Without warning, the quietest moment of the day became the one your soulmate will remember the longest. There was no audience. No dramatic scene. Just a single pause that seemed to stretch far beyond a few seconds. In that silence, they finally stopped trying to explain away the feeling that had been following them since morning. Instead of resisting it, they simply listened. And what they discovered was not an answer, it was a question that refused to leave their heart. Why does every meaningful moment somehow bring my thoughts back to the same person? That question stayed with them, growing softer, yet stronger, with every passing minute. Don't skip. Because the next few moments reveal why today became unforgettable. As evening settled around them, something unexpected caught their attention. It wasn't a grand event or an unbelievable coincidence. It was something beautifully ordinary, a familiar song drifting through the air, a gentle breeze, a passing smile from a stranger, a quiet reflection in a window. Yet each ordinary detail carried an extraordinary effect. Instead of reminding them of the world around them, it reminded them of the future they had quietly imagined but never dared to describe. For the first time, they realized they had been protecting their feelings more than expressing them. That realization was both comforting and unsettling at once. The more they reflected, the more one truth became impossible to ignore. They were no longer waiting for the perfect moment to understand their emotions. They were beginning to understand that meaningful connections are not built by perfect timing, they are built through honest hearts willing to recognize what truly matters. That thought stayed with them long after the sun began to disappear, quietly changing the way they looked at everything around them. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you, and your soulmate is closer than ever to saying what they have never been able to say before. Then came the moment that surprised even them. They reached for something, a notebook, a phone, a blank page, it didn't matter which. What mattered was their intention. They started writing. At first, the words came slowly. Then they began flowing naturally, almost as though they had been waiting patiently beneath the surface all along. They wrote about gratitude. They wrote about missed chances. They wrote about hope. But every sentence circled back to one quiet truth they could no longer hide from themselves. Before they finished, they stopped, read the words again, and smiled in a way they hadn't all day. It wasn't because everything had suddenly become clear. It was because, for the first time, they knew exactly what they wanted to tell you. Yet as they prepared to finish that message, their attention was drawn to one final detail from earlier today, a detail they had almost overlooked. The instant they connected it with everything else that had happened, they gently whispered, "Now it all makes sense." But what they understood in that single moment is something they have not shared with anyone, and that quiet realization is about to change everything in the next part. Just when your soulmate believed the day had revealed everything it intended to reveal, one final moment quietly stepped forward and changed the meaning of every moment that came before it. It did not arrive with noise or urgency. It arrived with stillness. The kind of stillness that invites a person to stop searching outside themselves and begin listening to what has been patiently waiting within. In that calm, they realized they had spent so much time wondering what life was trying to tell them that they had almost missed what their own heart had been saying all along. Don't skip, because this is where today's story begins to shine in an entirely new way. As they looked back over the hours that had passed, a remarkable pattern became impossible to overlook. Every unexpected pause, every meaningful conversation, every quiet smile, every thought that seemed to appear from nowhere had been gently leading them toward one simple realization. The day had not been about chance. It had been about clarity. For the first time in a long while, they stopped questioning why certain thoughts kept returning. Instead, they accepted them with quiet gratitude, allowing themselves to feel without immediately trying to explain every emotion. Something softened inside them at that very moment. The pressure to have every answer disappeared. They understood that some of life's most meaningful chapters begin long before anyone realizes a new chapter has opened. That realization filled them with an unexpected sense of peace. Instead of feeling uncertain, they felt hopeful. Instead of wondering whether they should keep their feelings hidden, they began wondering how they could express them honestly, kindly, and without fear of being misunderstood. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. As evening grew quieter, your soulmate found themselves imagining a conversation that had never actually taken place. They pictured sitting across from you with no distractions, no expectations, and no need to pretend to be stronger than they felt. They imagined saying, "There is something I should have shared a long time ago." Then they paused. Not because the words were missing, but because they suddenly understood that the right message deserves the right moment. They wanted every word to carry sincerity rather than haste. Before setting everything aside for the night, they read through the message they had started earlier. This time, they didn't change a single sentence. Instead, they added one final line at the very bottom. A line so simple that anyone else might overlook it, yet to them it carried more meaning than everything written above it. They smiled quietly, closed the page, and whispered, "Tomorrow, I won't hold this back anymore." But there is one detail they still haven't shared, the very reason that single sentence became the most important part of today's story. It wasn't inspired by the conversation, the memories, or even the quiet reflections. It came from one unexpected encounter in the final moments of the day, an encounter that made them realize something beautiful about you that they had never fully understood before. And that realization is where everything changes in the next part. The day should have been over by then, yet the most meaningful chapter had quietly saved itself for the very end. Your soulmate was ready to put everything aside and continue with tomorrow, but life has a gentle way of speaking when the heart is finally willing to listen. They paused one last time, not because they were searching for another sign, but because something inside them asked them to look a little deeper. And in that ordinary pause, an extraordinary understanding slowly began to unfold. Don't skip, because what happened next became the reason they could no longer keep their thoughts to themselves. They realized that all day they had been focusing on what had happened around them, when the real transformation had been happening within them. Every unexpected smile, every memory that returned without warning, every quiet moment of reflection had been preparing them for one simple truth. They no longer wanted to hide behind uncertainty. They no longer wanted to convince themselves that silence was safer than honesty. For the first time, they understood that genuine feelings become stronger when they are accepted instead of questioned. Then they imagined you once more, not as an idea, not as a distant possibility, but as someone they truly wanted to understand better. They wondered how your day had been. They wondered if you had also experienced a quiet moment that seemed impossible to explain. They even smiled at the thought that perhaps two hearts can grow in the same direction without realizing it at exactly the same time. That thought brought them a sense of peace they had not felt in a very long while. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. As the night became still, they returned to the message they had written earlier. This time they didn't read it as someone trying to impress another person. They read it as someone finally being honest with themselves. The words felt lighter, clearer, more genuine. It was no longer just a message about today. It had quietly become a message about hope, patience, and the courage to stop hiding what truly matters. Before they closed the page, they added one more sentence, a sentence they had resisted writing all day because it felt too personal. It simply said, "I think today reminded me that some people leave a quiet light in your life, even when they are not standing beside you." They looked at those words for a long time, smiled gently, and realized they did not want that light to remain unspoken any longer. Yet just as they were about to set everything aside, their phone softly lit up with something they had not expected to see. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. But the moment they looked at it, their expression changed completely. They whispered, "This is the confirmation I didn't know I was waiting for." What appeared on that screen, and why it touched them so deeply, is the story they are finally ready to tell in the next part. By the time the night had become completely quiet, your soulmate believed there was nothing left that could surprise them. They had already reflected on every conversation, every memory, every feeling that had quietly followed them throughout the day. But life has an unusual way of saving its gentlest moments until everything else has settled. As they reached for their phone one final time, they weren't expecting anything meaningful. They simply wanted to end the day with a peaceful mind. Instead, they found themselves staring at something so simple, yet so perfectly timed, that they couldn't look away. Don't skip, because this moment became the turning point they never saw coming. It wasn't the message itself that touched them first. It was the feeling it awakened. A familiar warmth spread through their heart, reminding them that some moments don't need dramatic words to carry extraordinary meaning. They sat quietly, reading and rereading what was in front of them, noticing details they would have overlooked only yesterday. Suddenly, all the questions that had followed them since morning seemed much lighter. They realized they had been searching for certainty when all they truly needed was the courage to trust what had already been quietly growing inside them. For a long while, they didn't move. They simply smiled. Not the kind of smile people wear for others to see, but the quiet smile that appears when something inside finally feels at peace. In that stillness, they whispered something they had never admitted before: "I've been waiting for the perfect moment, but maybe the perfect moment is simply the one I'm willing to embrace." Those words stayed with them, echoing softly as though the day itself had been leading them toward that single realization. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. They opened the message they had written earlier, looked at every sentence once again, and this time they didn't erase a single word. Instead, they added a final thought that had only just become clear: some people don't enter your heart all at once. They become part of it through 1,000 quiet moments you almost didn't notice. As soon as they finished writing, they felt a calm unlike anything they had experienced all day. It wasn't because every answer had arrived. It was because they no longer needed every answer to move forward with honesty. Before putting their phone away, they closed their eyes for a brief moment and imagined what it would feel like to finally share everything they had been carrying inside. They imagined the relief of no longer keeping those feelings hidden. They imagined the peace that comes when words are spoken with sincerity instead of hesitation. And in that quiet imagination, one final decision settled gently into their heart. Tomorrow would not be another ordinary day. Not because something unbelievable was guaranteed to happen, but because your soulmate had quietly decided that they would no longer allow meaningful feelings to remain locked inside unfinished thoughts. There is only one thing left now: the message itself. The words they have been protecting since this morning are finally ready to be spoken, and when you hear them in the next part, you'll understand why today became the day they will never forget. There comes a moment when silence has fulfilled its purpose. It no longer protects the heart, it simply delays the words that have been waiting to be spoken. That was the moment your soulmate reached tonight. They looked at the message one last time, took a slow breath, and instead of wondering whether they should send it, they began wondering why they had waited so long. The hesitation that had followed them throughout the day quietly faded, replaced by a calm confidence they had never expected to feel. Don't skip, because what they are finally ready to say carries the quiet weight of everything that happened today. In their heart, the message began like this: "Today reminded me that some people leave an impact without even realizing it. I didn't wake up expecting to think so deeply. I didn't expect ordinary moments to become meaningful. But every time I tried to move on with my day, my thoughts gently returned to the same place. They returned to you." As those words settled in their mind, they no longer sounded uncertain. They sounded honest. Honest in a way that required no dramatic promises, only quiet sincerity. Then another realization gently found its place. They understood that what mattered most was not finding perfect words but sharing genuine ones. They wanted you to know that today's experience had changed the way they viewed connection. They realized that meaningful people are not remembered because of constant conversations or grand gestures. They are remembered because they leave a quiet sense of peace that returns in the most unexpected moments. And somehow, today had been filled with those moments. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. As they continued writing, they added another sentence they had never imagined themselves saying: "If I have seemed distant at times, it wasn't because my heart had forgotten. It was because I was learning how to understand feelings I couldn't easily explain. Today helped me realize that some truths don't arrive all at once. They arrive gently, until one day they become impossible to ignore. They read those words slowly, and for the first time all day, they felt completely at peace with them. The room around them had grown completely still. No distractions. No rush. Just one heart finally willing to speak with honesty. They placed their hand over the page for a brief moment, almost as if thanking the day for everything it had quietly revealed. Then they smiled, not because the story was ending, but because they sensed it was finally beginning. Just before they were ready to send that message, one final thought entered their heart, unexpected yet unmistakably clear. It wasn't another memory. It wasn't another question. It was a simple realization that made them whisper, "There's one more thing they deserve to know." Those words never made it onto the page, because they decided those final words should never be written. They should be spoken. And when that moment finally arrives, you'll understand why today was only the beginning of a story neither of you could have imagined until now. Just before the night slipped into complete silence, your soulmate did something they had been quietly avoiding all day. They stopped editing their thoughts. They stopped searching for better words. They simply allowed their heart to speak exactly as it was. In that unguarded moment, everything became clearer than it had been since the morning began. It wasn't that today's events suddenly made perfect sense. It was that they finally understood why every unexpected moment had felt so important. Each one had been gently leading them here. Don't skip, because what they realized next is the part they never expected to share with anyone. They looked back over the entire day one final time. The unexpected conversation, the quiet memories, the peaceful pauses, the message they had written and rewritten, none of it felt random anymore. Together, those moments had quietly uncovered something they had almost forgotten about themselves. They realized they had been waiting for certainty before allowing themselves to feel hope. Yet hope had been patiently waiting for them all along. That thought brought a quiet smile to their face, the kind that appears when the heart finally stops arguing with itself. Then they imagined meeting you, not in a dramatic setting, not in a perfect scene, but in a simple, genuine moment where neither of you needed rehearsed words. They imagined looking into your eyes and saying, "There was something I wanted to tell you the moment today came to an end." They paused there, because even in their imagination, those words carried more emotion than they expected. They weren't trying to create a perfect story anymore. They simply wanted to share an honest one. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. They returned to the message one last time and quietly added the only sentence that had been missing. Today reminded me that the people who truly matter don't always appear in our thoughts because we're searching for them. Sometimes they appear because our hearts are finally ready to appreciate what has been there all along. They read that line again and again until it felt less like something they had written and more like something they had finally discovered. As they prepared to close their phone, their finger hovered over the send button for just a moment. Not because they were afraid, but because they understood that once sincere words are shared, they become the beginning of something new. They smiled softly, whispered, "Tomorrow feels different already," and gently set the phone aside. Yet before sleep could carry the day away, one quiet promise formed inside them, a promise they made only to themselves. They would no longer let meaningful moments pass without honoring them. They would no longer allow genuine feelings to remain hidden behind uncertainty. And there is one final chapter still waiting, because tomorrow brings the conversation your soulmate has been preparing for all day. The very first words they choose to speak may reveal more than they ever planned, and that is where this story reaches its most beautiful turning point.